had spotted this concern from learned societies and that perhaps they don't have access to the negotiations that other publishers do. So we established this project working in partnership with ALPS and Information Power took it forward. So that was Hazel Woodward, Lorraine Estelle and Alicia Wise. They undertook analysis, identified 27 business models, all of which are compliant with open access. But there are ones from way innovative business models to things that are more traditional. And actually people coalesced around the fact that really the transformative agreement was the model for this period of time. And so as a result of that, a toolkit has been developed, a model transformative agreement, and now a pilot's being undertaken. And so that includes, I mentioned humanities and social science publishers, so we've reached out to them as well, not just learned society publishers. So Brill are one of the publishers engaged, the Microbiology Society and others, and they're working across, I think it's about 5 different countries, negotiation consortia, taking forward the model license, the model agreement, which is based on the JISC agreement, but again has been aired with all of those different library consortia to seek a model that can work and be applicable. Then other things. So of course Plan S isn't the only game in town, and Plan S doesn't intend to make the transition to open access all on its own. There are many different stakeholders to work with. So for example, meetings with open access organisations in South America, in Africa, all around the globe. I know, I think David Sweeney's off to Japan tomorrow to do more Plan S engagement. There's lots of engagement in the United States. But in particular, I'll just mention the arrangement with Open Access 2020. So again, within Plan S, as I've been mentioning quite a lot, there's this emphasis on these transition arrangements and moving, I suppose, funding from subscription to open access and trying to manage that in a more strategic way and actually make sure that costs are properly offset. And so this collaboration with Open Access 2020 that also has that mission and goal in mind and works globally, so works way beyond the number of partners within Coalition S. So the coalition is working hand in hand with them to develop best practice, and also Open Access 2020 brings together different library consortia from across the globe to talk about practice and how best to progress. So for example, as you can imagine, the University of California is extremely active in this partnership. A new project is on transparent pricing, and so this isn't really about talking about costs, it is talking about prices. So again, Information Power have been appointed, and this has been funded by UKRI and Wellcome Trust again, but we are working with the range of Coalition S partners on it, and it's really about a framework and defining a framework that enables publishers to communicate clearly their services and the value that they add and the prices for those services. It's early days, we'll see where we get to, but we are working with, up front on the steering group, publishers have committed to work with us to make that change. So hopefully, because this has been the sort of thing that's been talked about for years, so it's really nice to start to see that progressing. And of course, you do need, when you undertake projects like this, because they're quite sensitive, a lot of legal advice to make sure that you're not contravening anything in terms of competition and the likes. So it's being taken forward in that vein, and as I say, it's about a communications framework that can enhance understanding around prices and services. And then another, you could call it compliance or progress if you like. So if we talk about the different venues that are compliant to Plan S and looking at progress, then what sorts of data sources do we need to draw upon to be able to make sure that it's clear to people what venue is compliant? But I would actually like to say, actually, what venue supports full and immediate open access? What venue actually supports the good standards for open access? And so there are various different data sources obviously available, different services around the world. At the moment, the Coalition has appointed a task force to look at the questions that need to be answered, the data sources that exist, and then to define what sort of service and infrastructure might be needed to be able to meet that gap. And so that has started work, and I believe they will come out with their recommendations to the Coalition S partners in early 2020. And of course, one data source which is relevant there, if you look at the mandatory repository requirements in Plan S, is of course Open Door and the registry for repositories. So there's work with them, but also looking at them as one of the potential data sources to inform that development of infrastructure. So with all of this work, which is quite a lot, that's still not achieving every single action that was outlined under Plan S originally, or in the revised guidance. So a formal secretariat has been put in place, and that will should all be finalised and up and running in January 2020. A range of different partners from Coalition S have committed to a financial contribution for 3 years to that secretariat. And so that will really give a solid basis and foundation to take the programme of work forward, not just relying on essentially what has been voluntary effort. So, you know, I've been doing it, and so have other colleagues on top of their day job, but this will be people employed to take Coalition S forward. Not sure what's happening. It's weird. So this URL is the high-level programme plan, and obviously that will be updated in terms of new activities. Absolutely every action has had some action, apart from articulating this long-term vision. They've started to work on that now, and the leadership group of the coalition are at the moment expressing what their vision for open access in the long term is. But in terms of having a task group taking that forward, that's yet to be established. But of course, that's a really important part. I know often the sort of reading of Plan S is that is actually just looking at one model, and might there be implications in terms of future innovations in scholarly communication. And of course, the Plan S partners are absolutely behind advances and innovation, and so making sure that that's addressed is an important aspect for Plan S, and so that is one of the actions to help spur that on. And so what that then means is there are a few gaps in terms of, still having trouble forwarding these slides, there we go. A few gaps in terms of some of the commitments that Plan S put forward in the principles and guidance. And so really things for 2020, monographs of course. So Plan S have always said that they will address monographs, and so they have committed that by the end of 2021 a similar set of principles and guidance for open access monographs will be published. So that will be a key part of the work plan next year. And also more activity around sharing practice in terms of how we can support DORA within our policies for research assessment. I mean, UKRI and UK funders have made quite a lot of progress in that area already to date. And then there's also this commitment around infrastructure, tools and platforms and establishing incentives. So that's something still to be addressed by the partners. And then the issue of rights retention. So work has started around rights retention, but there will need to be further work in 2020. And I think in terms of making sure that the tools that can be used to help facilitate rights retention, being clear about those, will be really the focus of that activity. And I think that might be it. Yes, so a lot of work and activity. And I've put Neil Jacobs' email on there as well, because he is actually the programme manager currently for Plan S. and he's temporarily doing that until the end of this year. So of course he would also be willing to take any questions. Thank you very much.